Hi, guys. Thank you for joining us today. We have Dualta on the line. He has been in recruiting the last 10 years, specifically focused on placing other recruiters, which is really fascinating. So, deep industry expertise, all things recruiting, recruiting jobs, running your own big shops, small shops, medium shops, as well as he runs his own podcast. So, I mean, he's done hundreds of interviews with experts in and around recruiting. We are super lucky to have him join us today. Enough about me. I want to turn over to him. Dalta, I would love for you just to kind of start with, your journey, kind of how you ended up, where you ended up and kind of what your story is. And then from there, we'll just dive into all the things that that I definitely don't.
It is 8 o'clock my time, so I'm going to try and pick up the energy. Keep going. I don't have my MAGA hat, although it is. I hear Trump supporters are out in force tonight.
They are.
Where did it all start? Where did it all go wrong? So I had a good time in my 20s. I went and I did the uni stuff, and then I ended up working in bars late at night and had a good time. And I got to a stage of that where I got a bit tired, needed to earn some money. So I packed my bag and went off to Australia from Brussels, where I was living for a bit. I'm originally from Ireland.
We couldn't tell.
No.
Just kidding. Now we can. Now we officially can tell.
Just to be the stereotype there.
Love it.
All right. So went to Australia. We had this thing in Australia where if you do your regional work, you can get to stay for another year. So I met my wife and we were picking beans on a farm in Queensland. And we did that for about 3 months, and she kept getting fired from all these farms. And it was just a really tough time, but it was good fun as well. You're in the middle of nowhere. And I was talking to a lady next to me in the field, and I said, what are you going to do after this? And she said, well, I've got my friend is earning £100,000 as a cleaner in Western Australia. And I was like, well, who's paying a cleaner £100,000? What's happening there? And they said, there's a mining boom happening. And I was like, what is a mining boom? We're not mining in Ireland. So got on Google, had a look at it, saw that the beach looked nice. We spent the last of our money, got some tailor-made suits in Bali, got our resumes together, recruitment's a sales job, got into that, ended up doing that for 3 years. Charlotte did as well. And we went from picking beans to earning 6-figure salaries within 6 months. And mining, you have to see what a mining boom's like. I suppose, you probably know a little bit, like when Texas was flying with oil, but with their boom in oil and gas, that's kind of the vibe that it would have been. Did that for a few years. Big business, best practiced, London listed business called Robert Walters. Met a load of other guys just like me. We all had flush apartments, used to go to Asia for the weekend, worked hard, played hard, no kids, no responsibilities, big bonus checks, lived the dream. It was great. And then we just decided Charlotte decided that it was time to move on. So we set up we decided to travel for a bit, and we learned some entrepreneurial skills. We set up a little resume writing business just to make some money on the road. And it went all right, and it almost kind of turned into a real business, but we were kind of we're just messing with this. And then we went to Canada, we got jobs again, and the market crashed, and I realized that actually I'm not that good at this. I thought I was, but really it was a machine taking care of me. And I got my first taste of, oh wow, what happens when the phone's not ringing? What happens when you're not managed? Oh, what happens when the market's not good? And I had a really bad experience, but a really positive outcome from it, because we sat down, and I think I was pretty overweight at the time, and found myself not exercising right and just getting stressed, because I thought this recruitment thing was going to be easy, and it had been to that point. And Charlotte said, look, when were you last really happy? And I said, look, when we when we were in Central America traveling with our own business. So she said, that's what we'll do. Pack the bags. So we had all these meetings set up that day. One was with a lawyer, an immigration lawyer, a real estate agent, and a couple other things. She's like, we'll cancel all of that. Took the last of our money, went to Guatemala and set up our recruiting practice. And we had we had about 6 months worth of like that we could live on comfortably. So we got a serviced apartment, and it was just the two of us, the laptops, and we knew that we had enough time to make a few placements, and we kind of fell into the rec to rec world.
Yeah, tell me kind of what that start was like for you guys. I mean, what were you doing to get it off the ground, and how did you end up, in the rec to rec, doing the agency stuff? I know for me personally, it was probably, 4 or 5 years into recruiting before I started, dabbling in that. So I'm kind of curious kind of how that came about for you guys.
That's a funny story, I suppose. So when we landed in Canada, I got a job in Charlotte, was still writing resumes, and I went out and I had a night out with somebody who wanted to hire me, and we had a few drinks. It was a late one, and I said to him, "Look," he said, "Do you want this job?" And I said, "No, but my wife has a rec to rec business. She can help you fill this." And he said, "Okay, let her have a meeting with me tomorrow." We agreed some terms. I came back and I said to Charlotte, I said, wake me up tomorrow, ask me about your rec to rec business. So she did. We got up and she went and did a meeting, found a person, placed the person, and that paid for our wedding.
Oh, wow.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah.
So
And then
we had a taste of it from there.
Yeah.
And then she ended up actually working for that guy as his internal recruiter, and got an understanding of how that works in rec to rec. And then we actually saw that there was a gap for international rec to rec. You remember when people used to move around the world and travel?
Yep.
And
back in the day.
Yeah.
Back just good old 2019.
Yeah. So we saw, wow, that's cool. We've done this, so we know it, and there's obviously a market for it. And so we did that. And then look, we're talking 6.5 years ago, 6 years ago. So we were like, right, nobody was really into like LinkedIn content at the time. So we started writing content and getting a lot of followers and doing that. And then that created a bit of an inbound thing. And then that led to the next thing and the next thing. And then we tracked the global recruitment firms around the world, and then just moved UK and Irish recruiters around the world to do that. And then that expanded over time.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that what you got? Is that still kind of your bread and butter in your core business, or have you guys kind of found another niche that you're working on now as well?
Well, I'm glad it's not, because we wouldn't have much
of a business.
Last year it was so big. Mostly it was UK to America. Before, at the start it was UK and Ireland to Australia. That seemed to be where the flow of the travelers were going. But now it's been London local and USA local to local, but predominantly British firms, and we have a few American clients, American owned businesses as well we work with.
Yeah, that's awesome. What are you guys? You're normally doing direct hire and a percentage of the base, or how are you guys structuring things?
Yeah. It's just it's pretty tough with terms, and when you're dealing with other recruitment firms. But yeah, usually it's just a straight cut on the base, or there's something up front, and then the remainder on delivery.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing, man. And then you started the startup podcast, and you started that a couple years ago. So tell me a little bit about that journey and what that's been like, because you've interviewed so many people on it.
So I suppose, like, I've always been interested in being an early adopter in things, and I listened to a podcast for years called the Tropical MBA, and I was very, very influenced by it. And I, I was also starting to listen to Gary Vee a little bit. That's why he let me
Mhm.
use his office today.
Hmm.
Uh,
Excellent.
yes. Yeah, grab us another beer there, Gary. Um, he and that he was saying like everybody needs to have a podcast. It's not too hard and all the rest.
Mhm.
So I thought I did a bit of research. There was one kid doing a podcast in the UK, and he'd done a few, and it was scratchy enough. And then there was an American podcast, The Recruiting Animal, and they just scream at each other. And I thought, okay, that there's definitely room for somebody who's just going to ask clever questions and let somebody answer, speak, and not interrupt, and just see where the conversation goes. And because I was building my own business, I was really interested in what the big guys had done and what their journey looked like. And then I was also interested in like what's the latest technology and how does that work and how can I use it. And I suppose we just like over time, you just I got to a point where I then was starting to get invited to speak at events like
Mm.
the expos and things like that. And then I was like, okay, how do we commercialize this into our business properly? And what does that process look like? And then like I would have done a lot of the research that Gary Vee has put out some really good stuff on how you can do that, how you can bring how can you can make your almost your guests, your community, and then you can use all the content and chop it up, get it out there. And yeah, so I suppose just over the years now it's added and added and added, and it's meant that normally now like our phone just rings and people are like, hey, will you work with us? And then we're like, let's have a chat first, and like is it going to be worth both our while? So it's
Yeah,
definitely
let me ask you a couple questions on this just because this is fascinating to me. So did you start by interviewing people that you looked at as potential mentors, like people that you could learn from that had grown and scaled agencies? Was that kind of the how it started?
so I was probably a bit more cynical than that.
Mm.
uh, I did a few things. One, I looked at who are the influencers on LinkedIn that would be interesting and would be of value.
Mm.
Um, Two, what type of vendors do we want to start building relationships with? Um, and then three, what about our clients right now? Um, like which one of them can we get in? Because that's gonna like commercialize it. And then
So it's actually really
Yeah.
strategic. It was super strategic. It was you
from
following like an instinct, right? Like this would be interesting to do. I would enjoy doing this. And then it was, okay, let's lay in a strategy too.
oh, big time, yeah.
Yeah.
And then it was like, how can we bring it to life?
Hmm.
So that's when we flew to America, and we we went we found a videographer who was a student, and we went into all the offices and documented the experience and got everybody to know all the people. And then we used that in our marketing drive to fill their offices full of UK staff, and that was the big thing of our business for the next 2 years. And that was really cool, and it was the first time anybody done it in recruitment. Now
Mm.
Joe Mullings was doing this on a bigger scale
Right.
around the same time. Like he would have like all the camera crews and all the rest. Like so, like I was starting to follow what Joe's a client of ours actually. I was starting to follow what he was doing, and I was thinking, wow, imagine if I was in a better industry, like a higher yield industry where it had access to, you know, doing higher end stuff, and seeing the way his practices and work really inspired me. So I suppose he would be the first person I would have seen like that and gone, oh, that's a business I'd like to emulate.
Mm.
Yeah, and just to make sure that I understand it and people watching understand that you were, interviewing people that worked at this company, and then you were kind of giving a point of view, like walking them through, documenting that process, and then using all of that as your marketing and your content on the candidate side, finding candidates and also getting your phone to ring for other people that may want to work with you. That's brilliant, dude.
Yeah. And we did
Yeah.
that for every all the UK owned businesses that we have in the US. And then all like we did a lot in the Australia as well. And then we would have had people that we placed as well to demonstrate like like we moved people from living in a shithole in Birmingham
Mm-hmm.
where they were living with their mom and their cat on,
Mm-hmm.
and now they're in LA, they're living the dream. And documented that, and it really just was a different thing for people to see online.
Yeah, I have not heard of that. And who was the other person that you were referencing that you kind of saw as the starting person for that?
Joe Mullings of the TMG, and I I was doing it, and then he started appearing on my radar, and I was like, oh, he's doing this at a different level. What can I learn off the way that he's doing it? And then when I went and I met him, I could see that he'd done the back end analytics, and he'd invested, like he had a full studio, and and that was really inspiring, to see, like, okay, so I'm here and this is what the finished product looks like.
Mm.
Okay, great. Okay, so
That's so cool.
there's still
Yeah.
a journey.
Yeah, and it's so helpful too, because like what I'm really hearing is like there are mentors, there are people doing things that are successful, and like it is so much easier to learn strategies, tips, like even to start to see the vision of where it can head when you choose to look up and look out and say, who is out there who's doing this? Who can I learn from? And
Oh
then I
yeah.
can start to implement on that.
But they're like, I would have listened to some of the Recruitment Animal podcast, and I went on there once and they shouted at me for a bit, and I wasn't really in the mood for it, and that it kind of cut it short enough. But then I heard Joe on it, and I heard a couple others, but his episode stood out to me, and that's why I started following him, because he was like, oh no, this works, and here's the numbers, and here's all the, because I didn't have all of that documented. I was just like winging it, but he had all the data to back it up, and all the investment and what the ROI was on it and all of that. And so, yeah, it's important to know where you're at, but who's way ahead, and how can you work towards that, I suppose.
Yeah,
And you said
that's
something, absolutely. And you said something earlier that I just want to circle back to. When you were looking to, like, at first, when you guys started, like, it was really all about, it was just coming in, it was flowing, the economy was amazing. And then it dried up. And like,
Yeah.
for now, like, let's be really real. Like, we are in, economic uncertainty, and people are not, and so there's a lot of anxiety. Is now even a good time to start a startup? And it's like, you actually tapped back into how can I build a life that I enjoy? Like that's what led to the move to Guatemala. And I just really want to highlight that for people. It's like, what do you want to experience? And like, let's tune back into that and start to work from that place.
Yeah, and so there's two different, like, Americans are quite good like that, to be honest. In the recruitment community, they'll work really hard, they'll keep their costs low, and there's a culture of independent recruitment businesses.
We're
In the
thrifty.
Well, yeah, you're an independent lot. In the UK, there's a bit more servitude in
Such
their
a nice
DNA.
way of saying that.
Yeah,
Like,
uh,
seriously.
Protestant work ethic that they have.
mm,
But essentially, you're brought up in these big businesses, and you're coached to get to the next level, to manage other rookies and all of that. And then when you go out on your own, you look for investment, or you look for a backer, and then you hire lots of people, you create a call center, you go into that call center every day, and 20 years later, if you successfully navigate 2 recessions, you might be able to sell. I didn't want that, and I still don't want that. But I do want something more than the rec to rec. So when we invested in setting up the scale business, it was, and we documented a lot of that process and thought process on it. It was, how can we get into a better discipline? How can we implement all the stuff that we knew in this area? But let's get, well, we tried 2 people, right? One survived and the other hasn't. And that's pretty standard. And the one that has, we have the podcast, we have the niche, we have the email automation, we have the VA, we have the whole solution just in place, and I've used one advisor at the start, and now I'm engaging with another advisor to help with the marketing side, and we're close to implementing something pretty cool in that. So that's a work in progress. It's fun. I get my head into it, and yeah.
Is this a new, so the Rectorec, is this still working with the Rectorec space, or focusing on a new niche? I wasn't.
No, it'll be SaaS within BA analytics, machine learning. East Coast of America will be the focus of it. Rectorec is still, I mean, that's a machine that's good to pay the bills. This is the Vegas bet.
Yeah, I'm curious, was this something you guys were working on during 2019, or is this something that, a pivot and something you guys looked at shifting when things started getting uncertain for all of us?
It's a really good question. It was absolutely what I was going to do, and I had a difficult decision whether to pull the trigger and keep going with it. But that moment when my business went from moving people around the world to, oh fuck, right, we have to now start filling local jobs, and let's do it quick, and like, let's cut costs, let's be clever, let's get as much retained stuff. We're fine now, by the way, but it was a really hard 6 months. And what that made me think was, I never want to be in this position where I'm the only horse, and if this horse has a bad day, we never win. So that's why we were like, okay, we still have a pot here. Let's back something that we think will work. Let's do it smart. And yeah, look, it's a work in progress, but I'm happy with where we're at with it. And I'm really, it's yeah, it, there's only so much I can do with my own business. And then when I get to do all the stuff I wanted with another one, then, and I can see it growing, and that's a really cool thing, to create a revenue stream that's outside of your own control.
I'm curious to know. Activity. Yeah, I'm curious to know what helped you make that decision, because that was a really difficult decision, and you leaned into it, and then you took the risk anyway.
I honestly don't know. I don't know. I think we just really believed in the person we hired, and I probably didn't think that we'd be locked down right now.
But I don't think any of us thought that.
Yeah, and like, I think if we hadn't have been locked down in the aggressive way, that business would have been way ahead of where it's at, because they had an established book of business. That collapsed, so then I had to go find them a new book of business. And then that's why one of them survived and the other hasn't, because I can only feed so much. So, but it's actually meant that the other person's had to relearn and go into a new area. They still have their existing thing here. So I think ultimately we were just really sure that she would survive and that she was worth the gamble. Opportunistic bet.
Yeah, and I'm curious, the lead generation, client generation on that side, has it been mainly content driven? Has it been outreach driven? Kind of what's the blended approach that you guys have used, especially since, kind of the bottom fell out and you're like, dude, I got to get business in the door immediately. So I'm curious kind of what that looked like for you.
Well, firstly, I don't think we had to get anything in immediately on that business. We'd budgeted to make money within 6 months. And I think that's something that anybody who's going to invest in a startup, they need to be like, pretty clued on that. Now, if you're going to hire two and one of them isn't going to do the work, you're going to know after 3 months, pretty much, if somebody's going to be there or not. So you kind of, as long as you're good on your data and your analytics and the plan and the structure, then you should be able to make those decisions. In terms of the outreach now, I have a guy called Richard Gibbard who's helping me out, and it's pretty how would I describe it? Actually, do you know what? I've made some notes here on it.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I thought
Excellent. Let's take a look.
I thought you might ask
A
that.
sneak peek.
I suppose it would start with like your crunch base. So let's say we're analyzing X amount of customers, SaaS clients within a niche under 500, just got funded. Get that list, send that off to the data person. Data person then puts that into a LEM list, email marketing campaign that goes out and hits them until it does that. But at the same time, Siobhan has built a diversity and inclusion podcast. So it won't be just us going, here, we got something. Would you like to buy it? It'll be, hey, would you like, I know I sent you that, but here, we also have this. Would you like to come on, share your story, and can we be of value to you? And then I think the next tool that you probably need is something like Sourcebreaker, where you, where that like helps you identify the great candidates out there, but it also helps match that to any live vacancies that are out there as well. And I think like we've got the VA team and the marketing team to be able to knit a lot of stuff together from a content perspective and that.
Is the content going out through the email or through the your LinkedIn, or kind of where's that getting put up?
Yeah, good question. It's not fully evolved on that site yet, but if I was to demonstrate where it will go, so on my LinkedIn, I would have 30,000 connections of recruiters. Now, I would have strategically built that up, and my wife would have done the same. So our content is by recruiters for recruiters, and like if you speak in their voice to them, about them, for them, then you will get engagement and you will get noticed and all of that. So we will be strategic in how we go about that as that goes. At the start, it will be more in the process that you guys are doing with this. Hey, you're a guy with a podcast. Would you like to come on our podcast?
Yeah.
Right, great. Send that, share that out. Now your audience is my audience. Then on to the next, and then on to the next, and then on to the next. So it takes time.
Yeah, makes sense. On just to pivot real quick, and you're a wealth of information. You're awesome. I'm loving this. So, the client side, when you guys, you go through Crunchbase, you scrub the list, you're like, okay, cool, this is our outreach. Is it kind of a direct outreach campaign? Hey, here's what we do, or is it more invitation onto the Inclusion and Diversity podcast, or is it another content type of thing? How many touch points? I mean, I'm pretty nerdy on this, so like every 2 weeks for a couple months, or kind of what's the deal?
Yeah, you'd need to interview Richard Gibbard on that, to be honest.
Oh, because you pulled him in to help kind of drive that piece. Yeah,
you're all that.
Yep, makes sense. Yep.
But to start though, it'd be more of a mixture of, hey, I've got this. Do you want it? And then that hits them until they respond. It drip hits them until they respond. And then the next thing might be, oh, hey, I've noticed you've just got funding. Congrats. Here, we've got a diversity and inclusion podcast. Would you like to come on?
Yeah.
Then somebody might give them a call. Hey, sorry about those emails. How are you?
Yeah, so sorry. So sorry.
Sorry, not really.
Yeah, so sorry. Not really at all.
Give me your money. Talk to me about that funding.
It seems like, having an audience in a podcast or something similar to that, and then, using that to kind of get people into a conversation has been really successful for you. It
has, but see, people think that there's a silver bullet, like, I'm going to create content and I'll get inbound. It takes ages.
It's a growth strategy. Yeah.
Massively.
Yeah.
You have to do it, to be consistent with it. And that's so you have to do.
I know there's nothing sexy about it. It's really simple though. It's like consistent, keep going, bring in support, build out team. It's a funnel. It's a smart funnel.
Yeah. And we're trying to get better at that.
Are you doing like one? Do you shoot for one a month or one every 2 weeks, or kind of what do you set for yourself and then fall short of?
Podcasting?
Yeah, on the podcasting side. I
was doing one a day for a bit.
Oh wow.
Yeah, look, I wouldn't even do any prep though. I'll just
roll.
Yeah, that's what I said to Kate. We don't even need to do this. Like,
Yeah.
Anytime you want to chat, we can
But I
chat.
just love chatting.
Yeah.
So.
He's like, Kate, you can chat. Don't worry about this stuff. Um, so I was building it up big time, and then I got bored, and then Corona happened. I was like, this is great for content, terrible for everything, but what an interesting story. That guy who was telling you he was going to be a billionaire. How are you now? Like, is your day as shit as mine? And straight away, I'm looking at him trying to control his kids in the background. He's on the podcast. He's regretting even coming on. I'm regretting doing the interview. It's great content.
It's real
And that's a
life.
situation we're all in. And it, and this type of stuff has just made it like, because I did it all audio for ages, and now it's like everybody's just like, oh yeah, it's okay, I'll rock up, we'll do it. Bigger the founder, or you'll usually find they're really slick at podcasts. So as long as they've got a bit of experience with it, they can just get on, knock it out of the park, and they're off. So yeah, more is the better is the short answer. And then I suppose that led us into creating our leadership community.
Yeah. Ooh, speaking of that,
Yeah,
let's
let's hear
talk
it.
a little bit about that.
Where do you want me to start?
Mm.
Well, what was the genesis? What made you want to
Yeah.
do it? And what's, what do you enjoy about it? And what do what's your vision for it?
All right. Okay. So, where does it start? Uh, all good ideas are usually done already, right? And it's the Tropical MBA podcast. They have a private community, and I joined it, and I had a look at it, and I had a look at like what they were doing, how they were interacting, what that community was like. Those guys are nothing like me, and I didn't fit in, so I didn't stay in. But I was like, this is really cool. If I was one of you, but they were all way too much into development and like had proper SaaS type businesses. And while I was like, wow, you're all impressive, I was like, this isn't really for me. So that was where that idea kind of was in my head. How can I extract? Because the hardest thing about podcasting to make any money is how can we get the data out of it? How can we extract all of that out and create a community out of it? And I had one of the advisors that I use, Andy Hallett. I've been working with him for a while, and he has more experience than me. So he's 20 years experience and much more big business and formalized experience. So he would have worked the whole way up one of the biggest recruitment firms in the world, and would have a wealth of different knowledge. Like, I'm good at that 1 to 5. I know that world inside out.
Same.
He knows like managing 300 people, whatever it is, like back office and all the rest. So we just got talking, and it was over the last lockdown, and he was like, we were in another recruitment community, and we were like, we're not really like these people as such. And then we just decided, what I said, well, why don't we do our own? And then we just filled a WhatsApp group. And then we realized, oh wow, some of these guys some of his guys were too big for my guys. So like they were like guys who'd exited and made multi-millions. And then I more had the next generation of guys who were still building big businesses. So then we had 2 groups. And then we had all these other people who ask me questions all the time on the podcast. And I'm like, well, the independents. So then we had 3 groups. And then Andy's very commercial. So he was like, right, now let's get the supplier. Like, how can we get the suppliers? So I said, we'll get another group then for the suppliers. Then we had the 4 groups. And then it was like, okay, what value can we bring to each? And look, it's grown over the last while. I think there's like 350 businesses in it now. We've some of the most important people in UK business in the top group. Load of like 100 brilliant businesses that will probably scale and exit in our medium group, and then we've about 100 in our startup group as well. Now in the startup group, we've got a mastermind that we've built out, and it'll be a lot of the stuff that I would have learned over the years from following all the stuff on the different recruiter Facebooks, all the guys that I've interviewed. And I've interviewed lots of bluffers as well, lots of people who sell stuff that doesn't work. So I know what works from testing stuff, and that's what we're doing with 8 startups at the moment. Once we get that down and refine it, then we'll have that course there. Um, and we've already had our first in-person event in Sydney, which we weren't part of, unfortunately, but the group had a great time, and the feedback was good on that. So when we get out of this, we'll do lots of roundtables, we'll do lots of events.
Mm.
We'll develop other courses that are specific to different niches, um, and yeah, it's just a whole different experience. Andy's a professional advisor for large and medium and startup businesses, so it feeds into his business. I'm a recruitment business, so it feeds into mine as well. So the way we looked at it was, if it never even turned into anything, it would be a value add to our customers.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's really cool.
that's really interesting. So people that are watching this are kind of in that, just starting, solo to maybe, 1 or 2 people, in their firm. Where would you recommend they go to find more information?
Just connect with me on LinkedIn.
Got it.
UALTA. Hit me up on that, and then we can get you in from there. Yeah.
And that leadership community is actually connected to the free gift you have for our audience.
Oh yeah. So if you hit me up, and you'll have a free year membership.
That's amazing. I mean, just imagine how valuable that is. Like, it targeted, specific. You can get guidance. You can have answers to questions. Like, that's amazing.
Like-minded people, yeah.
I mean, for real. So you guys, to access that, just scroll down, click the button. It'll take you straight there. And then, what's the number one thing you want to leave our audience with?
Yeah, I had to think about this one. This is tough. I think I suppose I'll speak to the people who are starting out, because I feel most qualified to do that. I think, like, really picking your niche and having the courage of execution to stay in it no matter what is key. Because if you start jumping around, you're just going to end up chasing your tail, and then as soon as things pick up, you've missed, and it's harder to create new content for different areas. So it's really just that, like, really refine who you are, what you are, like, stay in it, try and get into it at a good high end, and yeah, just have the courage of execution to hang in there.